Welcome to the Be That 1% podcast. I'm your host, James Silvis, mindset specialist and performance coach. And here on the show, I'm going to challenge you to think deeper, commit to greatness, and develop a stronger mindset. You'll hear stories from those who are living life on their terms, and you'll receive strategies that will help you level up. So the question is, are you ready to be your own 1%? Let's get started. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. If this is your first time listening, welcome. And if you are a return listener, welcome home. This is season 5 of the podcast. I mean, we're in the first couple episodes, so you're going to hear me reference a lot about season 5. I mean, it's pretty wild to think that back in 2018, this was just an idea, right? And now over 200 plus episodes, here we are continuing to organize information, to share experiences, to connect with people who can break down complexity and really deliver simple, easy, tactical ways for you to not only grow your business, strengthen your relationships, develop a stronger mindset, but really to have a better quality of life. And that's what I believe most people are after. I mean, yes, we have goals that we want to attain and ceilings that we want to shatter. But at the end of the day, we want to feel good when we put our head on that pillow that we're doing something meaningful, that we have people around us that trust us, believe in us, love us, and vice versa, and that we're making a difference, right? And so for me, as a creator on this podcast, I've really just, at least in this season, more so than any other season, trying to get even more intentional about the questions I'm trying to answer in these episodes, who I'm trying to bring, and really getting even more specific on, how I can create even more specialized content for you. So with that, I ask that if there's anything particular that you want me to dive deeper in or talk to somebody about, don't hesitate to DM me, to shoot me an email. Let me know. Like, that actually will help me better create content, because there are things that inspire me. And then I know that there's things that you want to listen more to really understand it and then apply it in your own life. So feel free to send that stuff to me. Today, I wanted to talk about ego. Episode 213. With Dr. Payal Sharma, we go into empowerment and how ego can come up in a team setting and even personally, and how to handle that. What's the antidote for that? But I really wanted to talk about even deeper how the ego shows up and destroys your success, your momentum, all the things that you're wanting to build in your life. All these dreams that you have, these goals that, come from within, these nudges that show up in times of solitude or in reflection, and that you may be getting in your own way. And here's how. There's some key distinctions that I've noticed just in my own life, in my own research, and seeing the clients that I work with, where they kind of fall, right? Where they can get caught and stuck. And so my purpose of this episode is really to just draw light to how the ego manifests itself and how it destroys everything that you're wanting, right? So let's break this down. There's five areas that I want to focus on here. And first, we'll talk about attachment. Attachment to things, or to labels, or to your plan, or to your current lifestyle, right? Like, let's just break it down real quick. So attachment to labels and identities. I mean, this one is huge. Labeling is like an extreme form of all or nothing thinking. If we have something that has failed, a project that we were on that has failed in the past, it's not that the project failed. We now become a failure. It's natural for us to slap that label on ourselves that actually imprisons us from taking more risks in the future or thinking differently. Labels can oversimplify. They can reduce ourselves and others to something insignificant. Labels are typically static. They lock you into something. And life is not static. Life is dynamic. Life is constantly moving. It's ebbs and flows. Life is on a continuum, and two arrows pointing in opposite directions, and you're constantly sliding on that continuum, right? It's not really binary life, but we tend to put it into labels, right? We're either pro this or anti that. We're red, blue. We're Democrat, Republican. We need identities to latch onto, because without them, who are we, right? And so our attachment to having to define what we believe, who we are, for fear of being judged, or because we just are very uncomfortable naturally with the unknown, we can put labels on ourselves and on certain situations that lock us into those types of realities. And that can be a major disruptor in you opening your mind to an idea that can grow your business, strengthen your relationship, just bring a whole new level of fulfillment and richness into your life, right? And I was listening to the Model Health Show. It's a great podcast. Sean Stevenson is the author, co-host of that, or the host, not the co-host. And he had this guy by the name of Michael Beckwith. He was on The Secret. If you've watched that, I believe he has his church service called Agape. He's a speaker, author, really, really smart guy. And one of the things that he was talking about in regards to the ego and labels and identities are these two forces that we really want to be mindful of, that we're not giving too much of our attention to, and that is criticism and praise. A lot of times when we do something and it gets noticed, we get praise, we get claps, pats on the back, followers, money, accolades, prizes, awards, things with our names on it. And if we're not careful, we can get sucked into being whoever we think we need to be in order to continue that level of praise. And so we end up doing things more so for the praise than for the actual thing that at one point maybe we loved and now have grown not to love, because now it feels more like a chore and having to uphold a certain standard or expectation or perspective, right? And on the flip side, criticism. If you stand for something, you may get criticized by those closest to you, by people that you may not know but know the right thing to say, that get inside and just kind of like that knife in the side, right? And if we're not careful, we can do things to avoid criticism. And so we end up playing it safe, or we don't speak our mind, or we don't go for the thing that we say we want. And so this is all ego stuff coming out and interfering with you building your life, right? And I'm giving you examples and ways that it shows up so that we can have the awareness to say, I know what's happening. Take a deep breath and recenter, right? And that's kind of like the labels and identities. The attachment we also can have is to things, like to our home, where we live, our zip code, our car, our clothes, our followers, our money. And we can get stuck in making decisions, so we keep that, because if we don't have those things, then again, who are we? Attachment to the identity again. And what is our status in this world? Do we become a loser if we don't have these things? Or our mind can just come up with narratives that spin the situation into a place that keeps us safe, or it keeps us locked into something that we may not want, or that may not no longer serves us. We can get attached to our plans, how life should go versus how life actually is. How many of you listening have caught yourself many times in a situation where you're like, well, this is definitely not how I saw my life going, or this situation going. And we wake up every day and sometimes, maybe most times, have an idea of how that day is going to go. And then by noon, we're like in a completely different universe. And that's the humor of life, is that we think we have control over our plans, right? And we can have intentions, we can have goals, we can be in control of our actions, but we cannot control the things that happen to us. There's a guy that I've been following for a while named Alex Hermosi, and he has a quote that says, "Expectations are our greatest source of frustration." That the way we think things should be is interfering with how things actually are, which is robbing us of the information we need to adjust. And we can stay stuck on a certain thing. It has to be this way. And that is kind of, it's hard to deal with, because in some way that stubbornness can prove to be a really great trait in, making a vision come to life that no one else believed except for you. It also can keep you stuck in something that won't be, that you try to make, and then you actually taint or ruin the experience. You see someone that you're in a relationship with that you want them to be X, Y, and Z, but they're not that. And by them being that, they're not them. And so now you've ruined that relationship. Or in the industry that you're in, you may think that there's this trend coming or this pattern, and it's going to shift into a certain direction, and everyone else is like, no. And you're like, well, I believe that it is. And you follow through with that because you're attached to how it needs to be. And then you lose money, or your partners leave, or your business goes under, and not remaining flexible is ultimately what leads to death and due to stagnation, right? So we got to be aware of what's going on inside. And one of the antidotes to that is really just cultivating gratitude, establishing flexibility, and understanding that life most times, actually all times in my opinion, is happening for you, not to you. It's happening for you, not to you. And when you look at life that way, then there's lessons in everything you do. And when you learn the lessons, you can make better decisions. You can become more aware. You can catch yourself in stuck states and do something about it. Right? The other thing that I think you can get attached to is your current lifestyle. I like the way things are. And then you are being asked inside of you to pursue this next venture that excites you, but also scares you. And you know that part of you, if you were to attain that, is going to have to change the way you currently live. And you don't want that. And this is classic fear of success. We can get so attached to what we have and how it's been that we stunt our own growth or block other possibilities from flowing into our reality. And so your ego can show up in all of these formats. And it's important to constantly check it, to say that you are not your labels. You are not your possessions. You are not your plans. You are not your current lifestyle. Everything can change, because change is the only constant. And that's why flexibility, adaptability, agility is so important. And it is a skill. It can be cultivated, but it takes awareness and it takes commitment and learning from that commitment so that your wisdom enhances and your ability to anticipate can get better, and you just operate in the river of life. So that's the first thing. The second thing that the ego does, how it manifests, how it shows up to destroy your success, is it keeps you trapped in the past. It will retell stories. It will open up wounds that you thought were healed to distract you, to sabotage you, and all your success that you've worked so hard to create. These patterns of thinking that weren't established by you, but maybe by an authority figure, keep that well-oiled machine running, right? And that instills a belief, a limiting belief. It's just a thought that you've kept thinking, that you have evidence for, that actually creates iron ceilings for you rather than glass ceilings. Glass ceilings you can shatter. Iron ceilings, you are not going anywhere. So fear of other people's opinions can start rearing itself through things that have happened in the past. Fear of failure. You failed in the past, so yeah, maybe we are probably going to fail again in the future. Imposter syndrome. There's someone better out there, more qualified than me to take on that opportunity or to accept that position or to step on that stage. And all this past thinking that we haven't checked, that we haven't challenged, is going to continue to bring about the same realities. So we get stuck in our own thinking. It keeps us playing small, right? And then feelings of inferiority start coming, and then this hierarchy thinking of, oh man, that person's so far ahead. That person's more valuable than me. That person's prettier, better, more successful than me. And then we get trapped into this, again, identity through the retelling of a story. And what we got to realize is that we get to choose the story. That a lot of times these thoughts that we're thinking aren't ours. They're the collective thoughts. They're someone else's that we've just borrowed and believed that we're stuck with. But you're not. Again, because life can change. You can change. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It's going to take a ridiculous amount of work, but it has to be the work that you're willing to commit to, or else you can't complain about the life that you've created, because you're willingly or unwillingly manifesting it daily. Third thing is this idea of scarcity. Scarcity thinking, right? It's a belief that there is lack, that there's not enough to go around, right? And so you operate more in competitiveness. I got to fight for what I get. I got to steal it from somebody else so I get mine. Like there's only enough pieces of the pie and I got to get my piece. And so you treat people differently when you look at things like as if there's a lack as opposed to as if there's an abundance. When you're scarcity focused, you focus on what you don't have. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough fill in the blank. And this focus on lack creates and reinforces the identity of lack. Therefore, you feel less than. You feel like there's really no purpose or meaning to your life, because you don't even have the things that you want. But you're not even focusing on what you do have, which is the way you shift that. And that scarcity brings about more scarcity. Confirmation bias, a bias that we naturally have in our own thinking, is we constantly scan our environment for things that make us right. And so if we don't have enough money, we got to find all the reasons, all the people, all the situations as to why we don't have money so that we can continue to not have money or to not have time. And again, that is a narrative, the narrative that controls your focus, that leads to certain actions and behaviors that then reinstalls that same reality, and you get stuck in the matrix. Scarcity is a choice. And yes, there may be little that you do have, but you do have something. And by focusing on that something, regardless of how small or how big you think that is, that one thing turns into two things, that turns into many things, that turns into a lot of things, that turns into an abundance of things. And that is a compound effect. And that comes from conscious choice. That comes from intentionally inserting a story into your psyche day after day, as many moments as you possibly can, and then you rewire yourself through your consistency and through your new actions. And when you start doing that, you attract new relationships that bring about new ideas, new opportunities that lead to new results, that lead to a different quality of life. So make sure that you catch those thoughts that are rooted in scarcity, because that is very primal thinking. And that primal thinking keeps us in primal acting. And primal acting is all about survival. Get out of death. Don't die. And it's hard to create when you're there. And if money's tight, I understand, like, as much as I can understand. I was living off of $700 and having to pay rent and all of my bills, and had like no savings and like $8 a month to my name after everything that I was responsible for. And it was hard to create in those moments. But somehow deep down, I had a strong support system, so that helped. But I also was very clear on where I wanted my future to be. And there were sacrifices that I had to make, not going out, instead of watching movies or TV or sports, instead reading and applying what I was learning, journaling, asking for help, seeking environments where there was a lot of growth going on. And over time, I just started to learn where my blind spots were, what I was doing that was working, getting rid of the things that weren't working. And the compound effect helped me, obviously, with putting in the time. And now I'm in a completely different space. And that's not an uncommon story. There's a lot of people out there that have come from poverty, that have come from trauma, that have come from a lot of different places that are way worse than mine, that have found a way to rewire themselves. So there's no excuse to not change. It's just a matter of getting over your fear. Now, the fourth way that this ego shows up is through being reactive. And this is kind of coming from more so when you're receiving feedback, when someone's giving you information that can make you better. The ego wants to maintain a certain image. It's very fragile. And so when it receives information that indicates there's a gap between where you are and who you think you are to where you need to be and who you want to be, that is a very vulnerable place. And the ego, if it's not checked and it's not understood, then anything that gets received in that feedback forum is taken personal, as an insult, and you can become very, very defensive and closed off to information that can actually set you free and help you get better at a skill you need to cultivate. It can help you save time. It can help you grow faster. It can help you find more meaning in your life and in your work and in whatever it is that you're a part of. But because the ego in most cases doesn't accept that feedback or isn't open to it, then you're closed off to those opportunities. Now, this doesn't mean that you just listen to every person that's giving you feedback, because if the person is in a worse place than you, might not be the best person to listen to. Obviously, if you want more money and someone is very good with their finances and you've understood that for a while and they give you financial advice, maybe more things that you want to listen to there. Or someone who has a really solid relationship and you're wanting advice in that area, then if they give that to you, then that makes sense. But you also got to be open to receiving that, not assuming that everything in your life is good or that you don't need help, which is where I have gotten caught up in many times. Lone wolf syndrome and weakness over asking for help or being seen a certain way if I do ask for help. And honestly, I'm still working through that. And so just really catching myself in those moments, taking a deep breath, and then leaning in, because I know every time I've done that, it's yielded massive results. And every time, you can access vulnerability with a trusted source, it releases so much weight, so much baggage, that now you have so much more extra energy and bandwidth to put towards creating, that actually brings another level of joy, bliss, happiness, excitement to your craft and to your life. So catch yourself when you find yourself being reactive or defensive or closed off, rather than open to what can most likely serve you and help you. And then lastly, it can show up as like overwork or productivity. Like the ego can say, you are nothing until you achieve something or produce something. And so we're constantly working tirelessly, endless hours, 3 jobs, constantly putting our effort into our work, that everything else falls by the wayside. We become workaholics. We associate how many hours we work to our status. We brag about that. It's a badge of honor. Check out how many hours I put in this week. 80 hours. Yeah, I'm doing something right. And little do we know that all the other things that are important, like our health, our relationships, our spiritual connection, all go by the wayside. And even if we do achieve the status that we're seeking, the money that we're going after, the position that we're wanting, it's at what expense? And of all the people that I know of that have operated like this, it always implodes. Always. I haven't seen a model, an example, where it hasn't, because it's not sustainable. It's driven by something that can never be fulfilled. And so you're going to constantly be going for things and thinking it's going to complete you, but because you haven't done the inner work and there's a wound there that you haven't looked at, you are never going to have your needs fulfilled. And it doesn't mean that having your needs fulfilled is going to actually quench the drive to want to do more. It's actually the opposite. When you realize that you are already a success, that you have success in your life, and that there's levels to success. Now you have a strong base in which to build on. Now that's much more sustainable. You're aware of so many other things that are important to you. And then you can begin to simplify your life and keep the things that are really meaningful and get better at those, which is where high performance is. And that's where like you really start living life on your terms and mastering who you are as an individual and how you show up to this world. So those are the 5 ways that the ego rears its head and destroys your momentum, your success. So the trick here is well, there's no trick. It's really just cultivating the awareness. You got to catch yourself when you're in these thinkings, because staying there is not conducive to your growth. It's not going to help you be a better leader. It's not going to help you be a better father, mother, daughter, brother, spouse, partner. And that's our responsibility. We have to really understand, where is our center? How do we stay centered? How do we not go too far to the left and too far to the right, but find that sweet spot for us, not society's sweet spot for you, your sweet spot, your center point that keeps you grounded amongst the chaos that life is. Otherwise, you're just going to get swept up and you're going to be doing things for the wrong reasons, and it's going to be exhausting. You're going to dread every single day. You're going to rely on external things to get you to your artificial center, such as caffeine, alcohol, praise, status, these natural things that we can kind of get sucked into. But when we realize where we truly win, it's always the inner game, because what gets developed in the inner world can never be taken away in the outer world. So cultivate that mind, your best friend, and understand when it rears its head, that ego, because it's slippery. It is very slippery and hard to pinpoint at times. So it takes a lot of intentional effort, a lot of reflection, a lot of quiet time, and a lot of sitting with your own thoughts and journaling, getting it on paper, seeing what it looks like, not just hearing it in your head, but seeing it on paper. So share this episode with someone that you know is struggling with one or all of these things, so that they can get out of their head and into the process of doing simple better and being present, being where their feet are, and really squeezing as much as they can out of life and learning to enjoy that. So much love to all of you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for sharing these episodes, for reviewing these episodes, and for sharing your feedback with me. It's truly appreciated. And until next time, go out there, be your own 1%, and I'll talk to you soon.